Hey, this is Nomad, host and creator of the Career Musician Podcast. Why do they call me Nomad? Well, I traveled the globe, spreading the joy of music one song at a time. And now I bring you wisdom, tried and true knowledge, and life experiences of my colleagues and peers in this crazy business we call music. In today's episode of The Career Musician, we talk to John Acosta, president of Local 47, American Federation of Musicians.
This is the Career Musician Podcast with your host, Nomad.
Let's be honest, the union has a bad rap amongst some of us career musicians. Work dues, membership dues. They don't refer us for gigs. What about group health care and so on? But for as many complaints that we might have, on the flip side, the union does a lot of good for the career musician. For example, there's the Sound Recording Special Payment Fund, which pays the musician a percentage of royalties earned on each recording they've played on. Additionally, there's the Film Music Secondary Market Fund, which means when a film goes to a secondary market, DVDs, etc., the musicians that played on that film score get a percentage of those royalties as well. These are just two examples of how the union actually helps career musicians. Let's listen to this interview with John Acosta to find out more. John Acosta, the president of Local 47 AFM here in Los Angeles. We're at the Production Music Association Conference, the PMC. He's sitting here telling me a little bit about his history, how he got involved with the union, and I'm like, John, if we don't capture this now, we're never going to get it. Yeah. So you're in the office and they're telling you should run for VP.
Yeah.
I mean, just start there. Continue there.
That's good. So, I had been a staff member for a while, and I was, in a position running the recording department, and our president at the time, Alist Sessions, was getting ready to step down, and he came to me and he said, I'm going to be stepping down, and our vice president's going to, run for president. He most likely will win, and I think you'd be a great vice president and move up, move in that position. And I was like, wow, that's quite a change for me, because you're now elected. If you don't get elected, you're out of a job. So I said, I got to talk to my wife about this, of course. So I went home and I told my wife and everything. She's like, well, so what does that mean exactly? I'm like, well, if I win, I'll make more money. But if I lose, honey, you're going to have to make sure you get a job. And she's like, wow.
Back to the grind.
She's like, wow, well. She's like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I think it would be a great challenge, to move up. I think it would be a great opportunity. It's a little bit of a daunting idea, but I think I should do it. She's like, well, then do it. So I ran for office. I won. No one ran against me. I was unopposed. And I served as vice president for about 6 years. And, one of the things that I really tried to do, even with kind of an older guard at the helm as our president, was trying to get the young members more involved in the union and trying to get the union to be more responsive to younger members. Because I could tell that we had a lot of members, we still have a lot of members, but very few of them interact with us. And when you talk to them, it's never like the excitement that we need isn't really there. And how do we get that excitement to happen? So I would try and get more involved in going and visiting different gigs that were happening, whether they were union or not union, trying to, talk to members and say, hey, what can we do for you that we're not doing now? What are the things that you see we could do better? And, we started different programs, I guess taking the lead, but working with our board. We started the first music education program at the union, Orchestration 1 and 2, which is totally free. That's started in 2010, I think.
I'm taking the course right now.
We started in 2010. Yeah, with Ludwin.
Yeah.
And and actually even before that, we started a finale class. That was the first one.
Brilliant.
We did a finale class, totally free to the members. And we said, look, what can we give the members who are just paying the fees every year and just really not getting anything, waiting for a call, waiting for a job, hoping that something's going to happen, or they join but they're not getting anything out of it. So I said, why don't we come up with programs that are going to keep them excited? So Finale was one, super successful. We had an instructor from USC who basically ran the program, something that would cost you about $2,000 a year. If you went to like UCLA extension program, $1,500, $2,000. Wow. You got it for free as a member. So that was one thing we did. Then we instituted Orchestration 1 and 2 with Norman Ludwig. Same thing. He teaches that same program at UCLA Extension. Costs you about $1,500 to take it. For $200 a year membership, you get it for free. And you get everything else. And then, as vice president, try to do new things, new and exciting things. And then moved into my position as president and trying to continue that, improving our communication to young musicians, African-American musicians, and hip-hop and rap, R&B, Latino musicians, and doing salsa music, trying to get into the public schools so that the young musicians hear about us first before they get a bill in the mail of work dues.
That's
right. So when they see us, like, oh yeah, that's the organization that brought free music lessons to my class, or took me to the scoring session and showed me how to score a film. That's right. That's where we want to be. So that's a little bit.
But the knowledge of understanding why you're getting that bill in the mail, that's so important. And that's where you come in. You're teaching them, look, if you're getting a work dues bill, that's a good thing.
Right.
That means you did something on the card, on the union,
absolutely,
with union scale.
Right. And there are benefits to it.
And there you getting the benefits.
Right. Right.
From you, let's hear it from the press.
Right. Oh no,
talk
absolutely.
About the benefits. Yeah.
And that's the thing. Working under a union agreement, you get things that you'll never expect otherwise. Right. One, you get a guaranteed rate. This is the minimum I'm going to get, right?
So
of course you can ask for more.
Questioning.
Right. It's not like, well, what's your rate? Just pay my rate's union scale. Yeah. Then it's not a negotiation unless you want to get overscale, which you should always go for.
That's right.
You're getting pension contributions, so you have something to retire on. You're getting medical contributions, so you could, try and qualify for medical. Hopefully you have enough union work. And then that same job will continue to pay you down the line.
That's right.
If you did a demo, I'll give you an example. You do a demo on a union contract. Well, you're getting paid to do a demo. If that demo gets picked up by a major label and they release it, you need to get paid again, like if you just went in the studio again and recorded.
For master scale.
Right, master scale.
Yes.
Now, that master's recording gets picked up and gets put in a movie. Now you got to get paid from a movie session fee.
Secondary, or the film market.
First you get a new use payment, like if you went in the studio for the film.
That's right.
And then you get back in. And for that record you made, you're getting special payments on the sound recording side. You're getting film musician secondary markets on the film side, and you're getting a new use payment for a film session.
It's perfect.
That's all from one job.
All right, well, as I mentioned, we were at the PMC, which is the Production Music Conference here in Los Angeles. The PMA, the Production Music Association, is the one that hosts that event. And basically, that's an opportunity for people like myself, composers who do library production music. We all come together, we talk about the industry, the tech side of things, the progression of the business, etc. And John was there. So once again, as a career musician, one of the things I like to talk about on this podcast is networking. And oftentimes, a lot of us don't want to go to these events, but you never know who you're going to run into. So that was a great example. And I did feel that we had to capture some of that energy right there with John Acosta, once again, who's the president of Local 47 here in Los Angeles. So as you can see, oftentimes, all of the things in the industry are connected by one way or another. Now, in this next section of the interview, I sat down with John at his office in the brand new headquarters of the Union Local 47 in Burbank, which is in my neighborhood. Give a shout out to career musician Andre Delano, a dear friend of mine and John's, and he connected us. So thank you, Andre. Let's dig into the interview. I'm here with the president of AFM Local 47, John Acosta, but I don't feel like I'm with the president of the Los Angeles Union. I feel like I'm in your living room, bro.
Cool, man.
You are such a cool dude, and you're so mellow. Thank you. You're so mellow, you're so down to earth, you're so approachable.
Thank you.
And that's like the first thing that I want to start with is you. You're the president of the Union of Los Angeles, and let's not get it twisted. Some of the world's greatest musicians reside and work here.
Absolutely.
How did you step into this position? I know you started as a career musician yourself.
Yeah, so I came to LA when I was 17. I had been working as a musician in New York. That's where I was born, in the Bronx. And started out kind of doing hip-hop, rap stuff around the time. KRS-One, who was in the neighborhood, and Grandmaster Flash, and all these guys, Africa Bambaataa. They were all the older guys we looked up to, and we would they'd pack us around when they would do their jams and stuff. So we were all doing rap, but I always kind of secretly played an instrument at home, and I was also in school band. And my father was a conga player, played with Tito Puentes and Celia Cruz, so we had a lot of music in the house. He was also a big Beatles fan.
Which, by the way, you also have Latin heritage.
Yeah, Cuban and Puerto Rican, yeah.
That's beautiful.
So doing music and hip-hop, and then in New York, merging that with kind of live music, with live guitar, live performance. We were playing down in the Lower East Side at a club called SOBs, which I think is still there. And we did some hip-hop stuff mixed with live, and we tore the house down. Just everyone loved the idea back then. And then a manager came out of the woodwork, a lady by the name of Amanda Shear, who eventually started a company called Buzztone Entertainment and signed Cypress Hill and House of Pain, a couple other artists. Signed me as for management, and then moved to the West Coast and said, hey, you need to come out here. This is where it's at. So I came out and started doing music, got an offer for a record deal with Epic, and started basically working on the music that would ultimately be on this album that was going to be released on Epic. Long story short, as I was writing this album and recording this album, working with Matt Hyde, I don't know if you ever heard of him, great producer.
Absolutely.
He produced a lot of stuff with Booyah Tribe. He was doing back then. Met another guy named Carl Stevenson, who at that point had produced the College Boys and the Ghetto Boys. I had a falling out with the manager, didn't want to sign this contract. I was also good friends with Divine Styler. I don't know if you remember him. And he was, all the people I knew who were signed were saying, oh man, it's a horrible deal, don't go through with it. So I ended up walking away from the deal, going back to New York and just trying to figure out, okay, I got to start all over, find a new manager and all this stuff. And then I got a call from my friend Carl Stevenson, who had produced these guys, say, hey, remember those demos I sent you based on the stuff that we were doing, mixing hip hop and psychedelic Beatles stuff. So I hooked up with this guy named Beck, and we wrote a couple of demos, and it just blew up. And now we got this bidding war, and I just got offered this huge record deal. You need to come back and help me finish this album because I can't do it by myself. Will you come back? Hell yeah. So he sent me some money. I came back out, and we started working on his album, which ultimately came out on, he was signed to Geffen, and then DreamWorks picked it up because they wanted it really bad.
Wow.
It was a group called Forest for the Trees. We put out an album in the mid-90s. Did really well. It was all over the radio, MTV.
Nice.
Unfortunately, Carl kind of lost it mentally at that point because he blew up so much, and he had been experimenting with drugs and stuff. Kind of lost it, got institutionalized. So the whole band was put on hold because we were getting ready to go on tour with this album that was just blowing up, right? The label came back and said, well, look, you guys keep rehearsing. We're hoping he's going to come out okay, and then we can put you guys on the road. So we were actually next door at Center Stage for a month, rehearsing, getting the band ready, looking at this tour. Carl comes out. They literally drive him from the insane asylum to Center Stage to say, okay, here's the band. And he's like, what the hell's going on here? I'm not going on tour. What are you guys doing? I didn't even know this was happening.
I'm just getting well, yeah.
So long story short, that's kind of was my entry to getting to L.A., and then other projects I ended up working on as a musician. Jude, who was signed to Maverick, an artist called Thousand Clowns that was on Elektra. We had a couple hits in Europe. Did a lot of demo work, session work for other artists. And then eventually, as I started having a family, I had a kid, and then I had a second kid. And as a musician, working from check to check, you get a big check, and then you have to figure out how to make that work out for a few months until the next big check.
That's right.
And at one point I really realized I had to make a change because I was offered a tour. I was told by this well-known ska band, I think it was called the Hepcats, or some artists that were going on tour. So, hey man, we need a guitarist, you want to come with us? And it was a 6-month tour. By then I had 2 kids. And I knew how when I was born, my dad was never home touring. And I said, wow, this sounds really exciting. I want to do it. But then I thought, but I'm not going to see my son for 6 months, or my kids. And I realized, okay, whatever I do, I got to be able to stay in L.A.
Right.
and do it, stay next to home.
Sure.
So, at that point I started realizing, okay, music is in my heart, but I also got to figure out other ways to stay in the industry that aren't always going to be playing my instrument or writing or producing or arranging, which I was doing. So I started doing production work, engineering, running studios. I ran a studio in Hollywood called RBC Studios.
Yeah.
And we were doing a lot of sound recording stuff, motion picture stuff, radio. I basically ran the studio.
Wow. They
had an agency of actors, SAG-AFTRA, or SAG agency back then. And I was doing so well on the studio side with clients and running all of that. They said, hey, we're having a lot of problems with the agency. Will you run the agency? And I didn't know anything about running actors, but I just said, all right, whatever. I started running that for them. And then 2001 came, and September 11th, and everything just went crashed. As you know, the industry, the whole world, basically economy just tanked.
Fell apart.
And the studio started slowing down a lot. We were still able to move forward, but, we had to cut back a lot. The company that we had also had a lot of radio stations on the East Coast, and they started going under because all the advertising was being cut back because of the economy being so horrible. And then I was like, okay, I saw the writing on the wall. I got to figure out another gig. All this time, I had worked union. I was doing the DreamWorks stuff and Geffen and Elektra Records, all the major label stuff I did. I was always on the card, and I was getting, I would be a member, then I'd drop out. I'd pay my dues. I wouldn't.
The all too familiar story of everyone. Yeah.
And then one day, or one of the days I was at this RBC, and I took a lunch break, and I was walking down Vine, and I walked on by the old building. I'm like, oh, there's the building. Shit, I haven't been in a while. Let me go in. So go in the building. These doors are open, and I look in. There's this huge recording studio in the back. And I was like, oh, that's great, because they have a big room. Maybe I want to do something with an orchestra. This would be a good room for that. Start talking to the studio manager, and she's like, oh, you're an engineer? We need engineers. Are you interested in working as an engineer here? So I was like, yeah, here's my card, whatever. And I started doing projects and, bringing clients in, and then eventually left the other studio, and I was totally freelance. And then one day they said, hey, there's another position open working as a concert or live performance rep. You might be interested in that. And it had benefits, which I didn't have, like medical insurance and pension.
Wow.
With the family, medical was huge, right?
Yeah.
I was like, all right, let me look into this. And at that point, the union to me was really old and crusty.
Right.
It was kind of like going to the DMV.
Right.
Where everybody was like, everybody had a horrible attitude. You couldn't get anybody's attention.
Sure.
Had to wait. Everything looked run down.
I think that is
was not exciting.
The general populist, idea of what the union is.
Right.
Antiquated, yeah.
So I saw that. I'm like, do I really want to work here?
Right.
But then I thought, but it's music, it's musicians, and it's LA Phil, and it's the opera, and it's the record companies and all that. So I was like, let me try it. So I said, well, I'll do this job for 5 years, maybe.
Yeah.
At the most.
Sure.
Do it for a year or two, and then see what happens. And then that's how it started. I did that job. I became then the rep for sound recordings, working with the labels. And then I became the supervisor of the recording department. Then I I was asked, hey, you should run for office. You'd be a great vice president. And I was like, shit, that's a big leap of faith, because then you're elected every 2 years. You could be unelected. And I told my wife, I said, this is a great step up, but if I don't win, like, we're out of out of income.
Sure.
What do you think? And she's like, well, what do you want to do? Like, what do you feel? I'm like, it sounds like a good thing to try.
Yeah.
So I ran, and no one ran against me. So I became vice president. I did that for 6 years, and now I'm on my third term as president. So after this term, I'll be here 18 years, and I was only supposed to be here 5 years. And I look back and go, damn, that's crazy. And a lot of the things that I hated about the union, as I got more involved, were the things that I try to address, with my supervisors, now with the board, and with our membership, about making this place hip and unique and exciting. And that's one of the reasons we moved here, because of the old building. If you looked at it, it didn't project 2018 or 2019.
Right.
It projected the times before.
That's right.
And there's a lot of history there. It's a great building.
I was just going to say, the nostalgia of our business is amazing and beautiful. And we all have to, I believe we all have to have reverence for it. but we also have to look forward.
Absolutely.
And that's what you've been doing.
That's what we've been trying to do, is figure out what do we need to do to excite the young musicians to say they want to be part of the AFM.
That's right.
And it's a challenge because the world out there doesn't work the way our world works, right? What people are doing in the real world doesn't synchronize with all the agreements we have, so we need to be out of the box when we're trying to help these musicians and show them the value of the work they're doing, because it is work, and how they need to look ahead, not to the gig today, but your career. You're not building today just for today. You're looking at 10, 20 years from now, where do you want to be? And that's a big challenge, because as a young musician, you're just thrilled that you could do what you could do, and you're happy to sleep on someone's couch and eat McDonald's if you have to.
Absolutely. For me, I put it together in our teens where we discovered the talent. We start cultivating it. In our early 20s, we really hone in and really cultivate it as we're getting our first jobs.
Right.
And in those 20s, you are so elated to get a gig.
Right.
And never mind a consistent gig.
Right.
You're jumping through the roof. You don't care what it pays.
Exactly.
Or lack of
You won't even ask.
benefit. You don't even ask and you don't care. And whatever you get, you're like flipping out. Then all of a sudden you get to your late 20s, you realize, wait a minute, I'm going to be 30 and I don't have my bank account, I don't have savings, I don't have retirement.
Right.
If I have to go to the doctor, it comes out of my pocket.
Right.
Then you start realizing all of a sudden. So I truly believe that it is our responsibility as the older musicians in the community, as we get up in age, to distill this information to the young generations. And that's why I respect you so much for what you're doing.
Well, thank you. And obviously I appreciate that, but it's everybody here. It's
right.
It's Rick.
It's a collective.
All the reps. It's the staff that makes it happen. And, they're right on the front lines. And also it's people like you and other members who see the value and impart it. Because it's one thing if I go to a young musician and say, hey, you should join the union. Right. I'm the union president. Of course I'm going to say that. But if Nomad says, hey, man, you need to be under a union contract. You need to go check this out.
Right.
That vibrates differently to someone who looks up to you, who knows what your career is. You've worked with artists that they can only hope and wish to work with.
Absolutely. And I remember the time for me when it happened. I was working in Nashville as a session musician and also a live guy. I was in Kirk Whalen's band, and I did a bunch of sessions. And the first time I was on the card with our union, with 257 local, Dave Pomeroy is now the president.
Yeah.
It was new to me, but I filled out all the paperwork, blah, blah, blah. And when I got paid, I was pleasantly surprised.
Right.
But then I was even more surprised when I get my special payments in August.
Right.
I believe it's August, right? Yeah. And I said, wait a minute, I played on that record last year. Why am I getting paid again?
I had the same thing happen to me.
And then you realize...
I thought they made a mistake. When I got the extra check, I was like, oh my God, they messed up. I already got paid for this. Should I call anybody? Like, nah, I'm just going to cash it and wait for them to call me.
That's right. As a musician, that's how we live, man. We have to.
Well, and on that note, I remember
working
with Carl and for the Forestry Tree stuff, and getting that extra check the following year and not saying anything, I'm like, because I think they messed up, so I'm just going to put it in the bank. And then going to a session with him and then feeling guilty. I said, hey, I got to tell you something. So I think the label screwed up because they pay me again for this thing. And he's like, no, that's cool. It's part of the royalties you're supposed to get. And I was like relieved because I was feeling really guilty.
That's right.
The Catholic guilt.
That's right.
Well, as career musicians, we do live paycheck to paycheck sometimes, gig to gig. It's just the nature of the biz. And being independently contracted and self-employed, it just goes with the territory. But look, there's a great positive about the union. These sound recording special payments, the film music secondary market fund, all these things pay back to us dividends, if you will, which are just percentages of royalties. Furthermore, the union is a place of refuge for the musician. If you have an issue getting paid by certain production companies or what have you, you can go to the union and they will help track down that money.
You're listening to the Career Musician Podcast with your host, Nomad. Add the Career Musician to your playlist today.
I do want to talk about some of the benefits. So these are advantages of the union. You get a percentage of the royalties of all the albums that you've played on,
right.
And they call it the Special Payments Fund,
right.
the sound recording
Special Payments Fund.
Right. Their office is located in New York.
Right.
And it happens every August.
Right.
So the more albums you play on, the more commissions you're getting, basically.
Right. The more royalties.
Yeah.
And that fund was established a long time ago, but it's basically a fund that, based on the health of the industry, and obviously now physical sales is pretty much, gone away. It's more about streaming. And so the union has been really fighting hard at the negotiating table with the labels to increase the streaming revenue, because that's where all the activity is.
Right. The Modernization Act, basically.
Right. Well, that's part of it, but also our collective bargaining agreement with the sound recording labels has certain provisions. We were able to put in an influx of almost $4 million into those funds from one negotiation where they had been audited, and the labels owed all this money in pension contributions. And so part of the settlement was they would come up with a number, which was $4 million at that point. A big chunk of that went into the Special Payments Fund, boosted it up, and then another portion went to the trust fund for live performance jobs. We have a fund that funds live performances in free and open spaces to generate more enthusiasm around live music, but also to give work to musicians.
Amazing.
So those funds, are there, and they benefit from the recordings that you guys do.
Yeah. Now let's talk about film. The same thing happened. My first film I played on was Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Oh, that's a great
John
movie.
Powell.
I love that movie. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I think now July is the film market secondary.
Film musicians secondary market fund. Right.
Another same thing. You're getting a percentage of the royalties that are garnered from these.
Yeah. The two different funds are similar in that they're royalties from musicians. The Sound Recording Special Payments Fund is based on all of the sales of the industry, and then however many sessions you do, you get a pro rata percentage payment of that, and it's a 5-year window. So you'll get royalties for 5 years on those recordings. After 5 years, they end.
Right.
The Film Musicians Fund is based on how well the film does in secondary markets. So streaming revenue, on demand, airplane use.
At the time, it was DVD.
Right, DVD, video on demand. Everything now is digital, but basically all those other aftermarkets, all the revenue the film creates from those markets, 1% of the producer's gross is distributed to all the musicians on that, and that's in perpetuity.
And let me say, 1% of the producer's gross, speaking from experience, I know we both know, doesn't sound like a lot, but it actually is.
It can be.
It can be, depending on how big the film is.
Absolutely.
I am just a guitar player. I did several overdub sessions on the card, of course, and every time I got those funds, they were decent.
Right.
They help you pay your monthly, overhead.
Right. And the more films you do, a lot of musicians who do a lot of motion picture work, that's a big part of their income. Some folks will get up to $50 to $100,000 a year just from the fund.
That's right.
That fund has been growing. The last distribution was over $100 million to musicians.
There you go.
And it's been incrementally going up because the value of the music that we do under union contracts is increasing. Right. While our upfront wages have gone down some, the royalties on the back end are just growing, and a lot of that has to do with streaming revenues.
Right. Amazing. All right. So, see, these are some of the benefits. Of course, we can't forget the pension and the health and welfare.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the pension fund operates more as a long-term benefit. And so for every union job you do, the employers pay a percentage above and beyond your salary. So, for instance, if you do, let's say, a recording session, you might get a single session scales about $400.
Right.
The employer will pay about 12% of that, about $40 to $50, into a pension account for you. Mm-hmm. If you get enough money in your pension account over a 5-year period, you vest in the pension, which I'm sure you've already vested. That means you'll never lose that pension ever.
That's right.
So if you become a animator, or just you go into a different industry, you stop doing music, that pension will still be there for you. On the health side,
this gets a little tricky.
Yeah.
It gets a little convoluted.
The health and welfare.
Please.
Yeah. So there's 2 health plans that the union has. One is the Local 47 Health and Welfare Fund that we are the sponsor of. That's attached to all of our live performance contracts, to sound recording work, to jingles, commercials, and to live television. And then we have another fund called the Flex Plan, which is attached to just motion picture and TV work. On the Local 47 Health and Welfare Plan, basically, once you get $800 in contributions in a year, you qualify as an individual for the basic Kaiser Health Plan, which is an HMO plan. It's a great plan. It's got a deductible, I think, of about $2,000 to $3,000 deductible.
Yeah.
But
$800
in contributions.
In contributions.
Which, if let's say you earn $8,000 in a year under union contracts,
right.
And it could be you did a thing at the Hollywood Bowl under live, and then you did a thing at Nokia Theater,
sure,
and then you did a live tour, and then you did a couple sound recordings. All of that pays into the same account.
That's right. If
you get to a number of about $8,000 that year in wages under union agreements, and the contribution is 10%, that's your $800, because 10% of 8,000 is 800.
Of course.
Once you qualify, you get full medical, dental, vision, and chiropractic.
Amazing.
All you pay is about $125 a month in premium.
Amazing.
You still pay your premium,
right,
but it's a subsidized plan. The plan itself costs like $5,000, $6,000 a year. The fund,
the premium is only
$125.
Amazing. Okay, let's say you can't continue perpetuating that work volume,
right,
and you don't meet the $800 contribution.
Right. So let's say you have it, and then you lose. You don't get to the tier. The next year, so you can go Cobra. You can opt for Cobra, and your premium will go up. But you can keep the same benefit for another, I think it's 18 months in Cobra.
So you can keep it intact while you're trying to get your workload back up.
Yeah. Okay. And the thing is to really hustle and know, like, okay, when I'm doing these jobs, it's in my best interest to put them on the union agreements, whether it's a demo. We have a demo agreement. If you're just going to go play in your friend's kitchen and do a couple of demos, have them sign the demo contract, pay your pension and health. That, whatever, $20 is going to go towards your health.
And it's a couple bucks we're talking about.
Right. It's not a lot of money. For each job you do, there's a small contribution, but they add up, right?
They do.
And, so it's in your best interest to say, okay, I'm doing some demos this week. I want to put those under AFM.
Sure.
I'm doing this live tour thing. Let me see if I can figure that out. I'm going to do a chart for somebody. I'm going to arrange a chart. You can put that under the contract as well. Almost anything you do as a musician, if you just went in and say, hey, I'm going to go do a lecture at, I don't know, West Coast music or something for a class of kids. You could figure out a scale that you could put that under and say, this is going to be a demonstration. I'm going to go in, do a lecture, play a little bit of guitar, and then I'm out of there.
Like a little
Let's put it under the live performance scale, miscellaneous 102. That'll get me $20 to $30 into my health plan and my pension.
Look at that.
But there's a creative way always to put this work under contract, and a lot of members are hustling to make sure that happens because they need the medical. They also want to put money in pension.
That's beautiful, man. You have a natural ability to look at everything in such a pragmatic way and follow through and get it done.
Yeah, well, I try.
Look, I know what some of you may be thinking. Sure, if I was an Alist session cat back in the day, I'd be filthy rich off of all of my double scale, triple scale sessions, sometimes 3 a day, 5-6 days a week. But the union still is valid. It still helps the career musician get paid a fair wage, regardless of the type of job we're doing. And sometimes you do have to get creative with the contracts and how to integrate them into the gigs. To be honest, I know I have a lot of friends out there that are not going to appreciate my stance on this. But look, I'm just speaking from experience, and I believe we all owe it to ourselves to check it out.
Learning the secrets of the industry from the veterans who know it best. Be sure to subscribe to the Career Musician Podcast.
So now that we're on that subject, let's talk about wage negotiations. Back in the day, 70s, 80s, 60s, 70s, 80s, one of my heroes, I'm sure you can attest, Tommy Tedesco.
Oh, of course.
Probably one of the most recorded guitar players I've played on all the TV film dates.
Have you seen the Wrecking Crew?
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's great on there.
Yeah, the documentary, beautiful. So those cats from that era, right? They were making money hand over fist because they're doing literally 3 and 4 sessions a day, 5 and 6 days a week.
Right.
And in that documentary, their first downbeat is 10 a.m.
Right.
Sometimes they go to midnight every day.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes they go to 9 p.m., whatever.
Right.
Putting it in. They're putting the work in.
Right.
Then you had the 80s. The cocaine era, right? Everything is just glitz and glam and it just blows up. Right. Now everybody's like, yo, we're pop stars. Michael Jackson's making $1 bajillion. Right. Guess what? I'm playing on the record. I want my piece of the pie. Right. I'm charging triple scale.
Right.
When did that happen where scales started to be negotiable? Where cats could say, or was that always a thing? Look, you know what, man? I'm double scale. You want me? I'm double scale.
Right.
Or, you know.
My understanding of this, and I think Rick, who's been around longer, will give you his take.
Okay.
But when I got into this industry in the 90s, it was already out there. That, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
You probably had the same experience where I would have a producer call me in and say, hey, I need you to come in and lay some guitar on these tracks. And I would be there all day. I would be there 10 hours. You know, I'll be there from the morning. And I might be sitting half of the time on the couch playing video games or whatever.
But you're waiting. At his call.
But I'm just waiting for them to call me in.
That's right.
If they put all that time on the contract, it would be 10 hours of union scale. That's a lot of money. Yeah. So they would say, hey, man, we're going to give you double scale for today.
For the day.
Yeah. You're going to get double scale.
Gotcha.
You know, is that cool? And I was in my 20s. I didn't even know what that meant.
Right.
I said, oh, you're paying me, right? Okay, good.
There we go.
Other producers, I would go in and just do an hour.
Yeah.
But this was a project where there was a lot of money involved. Mm-hmm. And they'd be like, yeah, I'm going to give you triple scale for this. I was never in the position like Tedesco to say, I'm triple scale.
Right.
There are a lot of people in this town, and the contractors know, because I hear from them, that if you want Wayne Bergeron, trumpet, he's a triple scale.
Absolutely.
Right, minimum. Or, you know, Rick was in that camp too, whatever. Or guaranteed doubles.
Sure.
Like, you know what a double
you get the doubles.
So some people would say a double basically is a 25% bump on your scale. Right. A motion picture is a 50% bump.
Wow.
But even though you didn't play the double, which is another instrument.
So doubles meaning it's another instrument within your...
In your music, your instrument group.
Yeah.
So like if you're sax, you go to flute, or you do sax, flute, clarinet.
If you're guitar, you go to banjo.
Right, exactly. So they would say, I'm going to give you 2 guaranteed doubles on this call. So you would get scale plus 2 guaranteed doubles, and you didn't even play them.
Beautiful.
But those are the players who are we would call first call.
First call.
And I think it goes back at least to the 70s, if not more.
Got you. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. I love that because I've been double scale for a long time. Of course, I negotiate sometimes. I'll have to do single scale. But at the end of the day, these rates really do add up.
Right.
And they help. Another workaround, and believe you could probably shed even more light, leader. Scale. So even if they don't want to give you double, to say, okay, well, pay me leader.
Right, which is double scale anyway.
Is this just double scale? Can you break that down for us real quick?
Yeah, so every union gig has a leader.
Right.
It's either 200% most of the time. There's some contracts where it's 150%. But as the leader, you're technically the one leading the session.
Right.
But a lot of times, if you're there by yourself, like you'll go in and just do some tracks for someone.
Overdubs.
You're by yourself. You're the leader, even though you're not leading anybody.
That's right.
And that's one thing we have in our agreements. One thing the industry always comes back and says, why are we paying this leader shit? Like, we need to, take that out of the contract because they're just coming in and doing some overdubs.
Yeah.
That's like a sacred cow for the union. We will never give up. People will die before they give up leader.
Amen.
We've been in negotiations where you'd have the president of Nashville, the president of LA, the president of New York, all these people sitting at a big table, all the record companies on the other side. So we got to get rid of this leader thing. We got to, we got to cut back. And every single one to a person saying we will die before we give that up.
See, that's amazing. And let's talk about the executives that work at these labels. Yeah. They're not willing to give up all their perks.
No, of course not.
Come on, man. Yeah. The money that they're making hand over fist.
If you look at the record industry, it's $1 billion industry.
That's right.
And it's growing. It's gotten a lot better now with streaming increases.
It's gotten its legs back.
But when we negotiate with the labels, you're talking about an industry for musicians that's about maybe $20 million in wages a year. For a $3-4 billion industry to be haggling over $20 million, $20 million, and
that's sad.
And they're making music, right?
Yes.
So what's integral to music is musicians.
Musicians.
So how could they treat the people who are the foundation of what the industry, what the product is, like crap, which is what they do? And we go back and forth in negotiations, and eventually we cut a deal. But you get a lot of these people are not musicians.
Right.
They don't know what it's like to rehearse in your studio for 5 hours a day, or all the work and the instrument and the upkeep.
Let's talk about the 10,000 hours, which really equates to 50,000 hours to get at this level.
Absolutely,
the amount of practice and sacrifice. That's right.
Right.
And I always say the musicians really do get the short end of the stick because if you think about it, all other occupations like you said, athletes, okay?
Right.
Let's talk about doctors and lawyers and people of these walks of life. Their accolades only keep going up the more schooling they do, the more studying and training they do. Right?
Yeah.
Their paychecks reflect that.
Right.
It goes higher.
Right. That's true.
Musicians, it almost has the opposite effect.
Not at all, yeah. No, it has no effect.
It's really sad.
Right.
So, again, I'm gonna go a little left here. That's why I believe we are stronger united.
Absolutely.
Hate to sound corny, but the essence of union is unity.
Absolutely.
And if we band together, sorry for the puns,
right.
but as musicians,
that's good.
And really, I feel, again, I'm not kissing up to you, bro, because we're both guitar players. Yeah. We're both Cuban.
Absolutely.
These are the reasons why we have to stick together, man.
Absolutely.
So, okay, we talked about all the advantages, how we can get paid, and in more ways than one, and the services that you guys offer. Let's talk about the big pink elephant in the room, right? The disadvantages of the union. Now, I'm going to be the devil's advocate here, and I'm going to say, man, screw that. Why am I going to pay you guys my dues? Why am I going to pay work dues? Why am I going to pay annual dues? This is bull. You don't help me get jobs.
Right.
You don't call up the film composers and say, yo, you should hire this, you should hire me, blah, blah, blah. Right. You don't get me gigs. Why am I paying you?
Right. Those are good points. I mean, first of all, the union is in me. It's not John Acosta. Right? The union is the collective of musicians who came together a long time ago and decided they were going to be stronger together, going back to the unity, than they were separately.
Harp on that again, because people need to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, the union is not the people, the building, the people who work here, or the building. The union is every single musician who's out there hustling to make that gig, to get that paycheck.
So it was founded from us.
It's made by musicians. So the musicians created the union.
Yes.
They got together. It wasn't some business guy that said, hey, there should be a union of musicians.
That's right.
I think the idea of a world without a union for musicians, or a world without a union for actors for anyone else, and there's a lot of problems in the world today because the unions have diminished. That means that when you show up for that record date, there is no scale. It's whatever they want to pay you. And how much leverage do you have as an individual to tell Sony Records, you got to pay me this, or I'm walking? Well, most likely you end up walking, unless they really, really, really want you, because the artist said, I need to have NOMAD.
That's right.
But if it's, especially when you get down to orchestras, or, a big, group of musicians.
50 or more musicians.
50 or more. Do you think that the fourth trumpet is going to be able to go to, in the case of Next Door, they were just doing the Seth MacFarlane Christmas party. Right. I think the fourth trumpet is going to go to Seth MacFarlane and say, hey, man, I really need to get, $400 for this. Seth MacFarlane is going to call him and say, this is what you're getting paid. And the only guide that Seth MacFarlane has today is the scale. And then overscale from there. If they want Wayne Bergeron, again, they're going to pay double, triple. But we are the ones who are setting the floor.
That's right.
And then from there we go up. If you don't have a union setting scales and negotiating standards in an industry, then it's the Wild Wild West. And you have that already in certain industries, and you have that in a way even in this industry. You still have the Wild Wild West. There's still a lot of union density. All the major labels are union. All the major motion pictures are union. Almost everything you see on TV is union, as far as live television. I mean, there's a lot of TV shows that are non-union.
Cable and streaming different.
Yeah, it's different. But there's a lot of growth there.
Network broadcast.
Without a union, then you have nothing to go by. And then when you go to work, if they don't pay you, who's going to go get you your check? You going to do it yourself, or are you going to take on a corporation? I mean, who's doing that for you, right?
So these annual dues are, I think, $230 or $240 or something?
$220, I think.
Okay. And the work dues, look.
As a percentage of your earnings. So if you don't work, you don't pay work dues.
Which, here's the great thing. When they come in the mail, I turn to my wife and say, oh, babe, we got work dues. That's a good thing. That means you just made $2,000 from the session, and you got to pay $40. Right. Okay, well, I'll do it.
Right.
Yeah. Come on.
And I get it. I mean, I was a working musician, and I would get work dues bills and go, what the hell? I mean, the first time I got a bill from the union, I was like, what the hell is this for? They didn't get me the gig.
Right.
Of course.
Right.
But what I didn't know, and no one explained to me, and that's what we're trying to do today, is getting to the musicians before the bill. so that they hear from us at school when they're in elementary school in high school. When they're thinking about being a professional musician, they're part of a program that the Musicians Union sponsored.
That's right.
So that by the time they get the bill, they know the bill's coming. It's not that it's like out of the blue. Because the label's not going to tell you, when I got my first gig, the label didn't say, oh yeah, by the way, you're working on a union contract and you have a lot of rights, and if we don't pay you on time, there's a penalty, and there's also royalty. I mean, they don't explain anything. No. They say, oh yeah, you get paid through the local, blah, blah, blah. But they won't give you the information because, of course, they don't want you to know that there's rules. Right? I mean, I took my first session. It took me 6 months to get paid. I didn't know it was a 2-week turnaround.
But let's talk about that, because that's another benefit, actually. Yeah. When that happens, when you're a union player, you can call the union and say, hey, call the sound recordings department, call the film TV department. Right. I need help getting paid.
Yeah. I did the session a month ago. I haven't gotten paid. I mean, that's a big part of what our staff doing is chasing the money.
Right.
And who's going to do that for you if there's no union?
That's
amazing. You're going to do it for yourself.
I can speak on my behalf that I was the recipient of, what was it, a 5-digit check because of the sound recordings director. That helped me chase down the money and get all of the B4 forms filled out correctly. Right. The B4 form is just a contract, basically,
It's a report
for the sound recording. Right.
And which the label won't tell you, hey, go do this.
And again, my at-home advocate, my wife and I, she did the research. We did it together. We found out the union is advocacy for musicians.
Right. Absolutely.
That's what it is.
Well, also, you hit on the earlier thing about the MMA, the Music Modernization Act.
Right.
How that will revolutionize the way that royalties are paid out, how musicians will be better compensated. And that was a big part of the AFM lobbying, along with the Recording Academy and other organizations. So not only what we do with contracts, but who's out there advocating for musicians when they're writing laws about performance rights. How much a musician is going to get when it plays on the radio or on streaming or on TV. There's nobody in the room thinking about musicians. They're thinking about composers. They're thinking about publishers. They're thinking about songwriters, singers. But the AFM is the only institution that's in the room saying, hey, what about the guitar players? What about the bass players? What about the orchestrators?
The brass, the orchestrators, the arrangers.
Right. That's the AFM's role. When we, last year, we successfully got a law passed in California on scoring tax credits. So that when movies get scored,
that's right.
They offer incentives to do the music here in California.
Yes.
In those negotiations, there was not one. There was IATSE, there was SAG-AFTRA, the Writers Guild, the DGA, the Motion Picture Association. All these unions were there with their hand out, but we were the only one talking about their part of it.
Sure.
We were the only ones there talking about music. We're like, well, the music that's post-production, we really need. We said, look, screw that. If the state of California is going to take my tax-paying dollars and put it towards a company's project to generate jobs, musician jobs got to be part of that.
Absolutely.
That was an effort that took almost 20 years, predates me, to get scoring tax credits into this program. It's been around 20 years and just barely even acknowledged that music is part of the industry.
Wow.
So those are the reasons why you need a union.
Going back to that, you ever watch a movie or a TV show with the sound muted?
Oh, yeah.
Not nearly as good, right?
Of course.
Isn't it amazing how the music makes the motion picture?
Absolutely.
Yet the industry still has an issue acknowledging that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the industry itself puts so much weight on the actors and the director, and they don't realize the directors, obviously.
The directors,
they get it.
They absolutely.
The film studios acknowledge it by having to put money in the budget.
Right.
But it's usually the last thing they do.
The last item.
And that's where they run out of money, and they're trying to do it on the cheap, which is why we see a lot of work go abroad. No. Because it's cheaper to do it somewhere else. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of directors in town, thankfully, you understand my film would be nothing without music.
Without music. That's right. That's right. John, I could go on for hours.
We could spend a day here, but I know your podcast is limited.
Yes, well, you're a busy man, and I don't want to take up too much of your time here. So, man, the camaraderie of the musicians here. The brand new facility in Burbank is amazing. You have beautiful rehearsal rooms.
We have beautiful.
Yeah, we. I say that's right. As a collective, we are a union. Yes. We have beautiful rehearsal rooms. What else? Lounges, and tell us about it.
Recording studio that we're starting to get online.
A studio that we're putting up.
right?
Beautiful.
Also, you know, obviously we have workshops and seminars here, which are free to members. So have you taken any of the classes?
Yes, I took the orchestration with Dr. Ludwig.
Excellent. So you did 1 and 2?
1 and 2. What
Excellent.
a blast.
So we're now talking about adding another program, a composing workshop as well.
I'll be here for that.
Seminar. So, yeah. And obviously we're always looking at expanding and making it more relevant to the younger musician.
Absolutely.
Which you need to tell, you know, obviously bring your ideas to us too, because I consider you still a young musician.
Oh, well, thank you, sir. Well, and that's what the career musician is all about. That is our MO. It's to spread the word to the next generation of career musicians that are doing this for real. Look, this is an advocacy for us.
Absolutely.
And united we stand, right? Divided we fall.
Absolutely.
Again, hate to sound cliche, but it's true.
Yeah, well, there's strength in unity. And that's what the union's about.
I hope this interview with the president of Local 47, John Acosta, has helped answer some of your concerns and questions about the Musicians Union. If you're here in Los Angeles, go down to their headquarters in Burbank and get to know everybody. If you're in a different city and state, find out where your local AFM office is and get to know them. Remember, they're career musicians just like you and I.
Until the next gig, if you've enjoyed today's interview, please leave a review and subscribe to the Career Musician Podcast.
I'm just a nomad, nowhere man, writing the songs in this one-man band. A nomad, yeah, I'm a nomad, So hush now, darling, you'll be fine. I'll be back this way sometime. Until then, baby.